Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
Wavelength.
Mental illness doesn't have to be a life sentence.
Alcohol addiction, abuse, misuse is the same all over the globe.
Sparking the combos about Adelaide.
So it made me feel very confident that if we did have it in the state, we were going to know about it.
You should be having.
There'll be guys that are trained, but they don't feel like they're good enough to take their shirt off.
Almost everyone is a culprit of doom scrolling. Anyone who has a mobile phone.
On Fresh 92.7.
Welcome to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. I'm Hamish, and tonight I'm joined by David. How you going?
Good, thank you, mate. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. How was your weekend? What did you get up to?
It was a good bit of fun, but it's not as fun as this news story that I just read.
Oh, hit me.
This person clearly had a fun weekend. So I was just reading this. Over the weekend, police caught an alleged drunk and drug driver on a go-kart in the northern suburbs.
Oh.
And if that doesn't sound like the best Friday night, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, Mario's really lost his way there, hasn't he? Yeah, look, I had a pretty good weekend. Obviously, the grand final was on, but I was pretty salty because Port Adelaide weren't playing. So me and a mate just decided we'd just watch the 2004 grand final instead. So I don't actually know who won the grand final. And to be honest, I don't really care because all I know is Alan Scott, you were wrong, and Alistair Lynch, you're a dog. You won't understand what that means, David,
no.
But that's okay. Some of our footy listeners out there might. But anyway,
is it even a grand final if it's not in Melbourne though?
No, it doesn't count.
No, I don't think it
doesn't. It's just a bit of fun. It's just a friendly, basically, I think, is what they put it down as. Anyway, tonight on Wavelength, we are chatting about our borders. We get that the rules are here to protect us from those dirty, dirty Sydney and Melbourne siders. But it turns out there's a bunch of people that are actually being left homeless, sleeping on the side of the road, just on the border. More on that later.
We're also going deep into the submarine topic that's taken over the global news this week, putting a spotlight on little old Adelaide as well.
But next, those protests in Melbourne, hey? What were they all about? And what's going to be the fallout? You're listening to Wavelength.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. We hope you're having a brilliant Monday. So, David, this week, you and I have been watching those protests in Melbourne with a very keen eye.
We have been. I've had the news on watching the protests live. I mean, they've been sort of entertaining in a weird way, but
yeah, like an episode of Black Mirror, aren't they? Yeah,
yeah, kind of. I want to go back to the start, sort of explain what they were going on about for those of you who somehow missed these ridiculous 3-day protests that were going on in Melbourne.
Those troglodytes out there that have been living under a rock. Please explain, David.
I don't know how you could have missed it, but basically it's been like a pressure cooker situation in Melbourne over the last couple of weeks. The Dan Andrews government, they've been really putting pressure on the construction industry to go out and get vaccinated. They've made it mandatory for construction workers to be vaccinated in order to work on a work site because there was just a lot of COVID transmission going on these sites between construction workers. Essentially, once that happened, it just got to a point where the Andrews government had to shut down the whole industry. The next day, obviously, the construction industry wasn't too happy. They've been able to continue operating during the pandemic pretty relatively unscathed in Melbourne, but they went out on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday in quite a big force. On Monday, it was protesting basically just at the CFMEU union headquarters in Melbourne. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, it sort of spread further. They started marching through the streets. Wednesday, they wound up at the Shrine of Remembrance in Melbourne and put on a demonstration there. So it's basically what's happened this last week. I think there were a few on Thursday and Friday, nowhere near as many. I don't even think they even televised it on Thursday and Friday. But it's been really just the news of the week for this whole week, really. And I mean, I do sympathise with them. I think there is a lot to be frustrated about in Melbourne. They're the city in the world that has been in lockdown for the longest.
Yeah, I know.
This whole pandemic, it's about 240 days.
I saw that headline this week. It's
crazy.
It's quite hard to believe, isn't it?
It's quite hard to believe. But at the same time, look, I get that the construction workers are a bit annoyed. They can't work for 2 weeks. My take, though, I don't know. Like arts workers, hospitality workers, basically all retail workers, so many different industries in Melbourne, they've not been able to work for the entire pandemic, essentially. Artists have been completely left behind. We've spoken about that many times here on Wavelength. There's not much support there. And the construction industry gets shut down for 2 weeks. They get asked to be vaccinated. Like pretty much all of us have been asked to be vaccinated, and they put on this little hissy fit in front of the whole world. It's a bit embarrassing in my opinion.
It did seem like that, and especially when you talk about, people from the arts industry and places like that, I'm sure if the government or they had the opportunity to continue doing everything they want to do, and for their industry to not be disrupted at all if they were fully vaccinated, they would take that in a heartbeat. They would be so grateful for that opportunity.
Totally.
And that's the other side of the coin as well. You've got people obviously in, nurses and doctors in hospitals who have, been, vaccines have been mandated in that world and in that industry from day dot.
Yeah, essentially from the start of this year.
We haven't heard a peep from those guys. We haven't heard a word of complaint from those guys because they just, I don't think it's any coincidence why. They understand it, I think, a lot better. But look, I do sympathise. I do get it. And it's not a black and white issue. It's not as simple as, like they're a bunch of idiots or whatever. I mean, it was a particularly low moment when they did, stage that protest on the Shrine of Remembrance. That's kind of where things, I think, really started to deteriorate. But, I do get it, and I think mandating vaccines, it is a touchy thing, like the moment you start telling people that legally they are required to, put something in their bodies essentially, and they don't have that sovereignty over their own bodies that they once had, it does get a little bit authoritative. It does start to feel a little bit deep statey. So, I do kind of understand that, and it's hard because I feel like people should have the space and time to come to these decisions on their own and
of course,
in their own time.
That's it, yeah.
And there definitely does seem to feel like there's this real urgency and this real pressure on people to do this a lot quicker than they normally would have to.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that is kind of just the situation we are in. It is a situation.
It is pretty urgent.
Yeah, that's right. It is a situation of urgency and of pressure, and of which we don't have a whole lot of time. So it's a hard one.
It is a hard one.
But look, thanks so much for that anyway, David, for breaking that down for our listeners. And look, if you do want to get involved, look, I'm opening up a can of worms here, but do hit us up on the text line. We're always, for the most part, happy to hear from you, but just keep it classy. Anyway, coming up next, we're talking about border rules and how many people trying to get home have actually been made homeless because of them. You're listening to Wavelength.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. David, this week you spoke with a South Australian who was stranded on the border of the state after losing her job in New South Wales and was essentially made homeless because of our tough border restrictions.
Yeah, that's right. I spoke with Jemma Finn. She's a writer who ended up sleeping on the side of the road in a tent near the South Australian border because of misinformation she received from SA Health. I'll let her tell the story, though. It's a real doozy.
Wavelength.
Jemma, I know you've been in a sticky situation these last few days. Take it from the top. How did we get into this position?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. But basically, we lost our jobs because of COVID in New South Wales. And we lost accommodation as well. So we were kind of in a bit of a sticky situation and a situation similar to a lot of other people at the moment.
Right.
But yeah, we got told some conflicting information from SA Health, which led us to travel to the border. We got declined at the border and then were made homeless. So we weren't really prepared for that. And yeah, we kind of ended up living on the side of the road in the desert.
Just what you want to be doing right now. I can imagine that's extremely comfortable. So what was the information that SA Health told you that made you go to the border and think that you were allowed to get into South Australia?
Yeah, so we were told that within 14 days we would have our approval, and that if we were in limbo, they might send us to a Medi hotel, that kind of thing. So we went because it had been the 14 days, and yeah, it was false information, which we continue to be told even more false information after that, or misleading information. We were told we were not allowed in. We explained that we would be homeless. We didn't have, essential things for camping like pots and pans or, mattresses or anything like that. And given that the state was in lockdown at the time, we couldn't just kind of rock up anywhere because we didn't have exemptions. So we were going to be forced on the side of the road, and they said, that's not really our problem. Turn around, go back to Victoria.
So you were essentially made homeless by the state government?
Yeah, we had nowhere to go in Victoria, and the state was in lockdown as well.
And how long did you sort of spend in the tent on the side of the road?
So we spent, I think, around 3 nights or 4 nights on the side of the road, and then once lockdown was lifted, we promptly moved to a caravan park once that was legal, and we stayed there. Still in our tent, but at least we had running water and, access to electricity. Now
they've let you into the state, so tell me about what's happened in these last couple of days.
We went to the media. We started contacting everyone we knew that had some position of power and just were like, you're claiming that these borders are for safety and to protect people, but who are they protecting? Because it wasn't us. We were literally ushered into homelessness, given no alternatives, no even compassion at all. And I just don't understand how the borders can be there to protect people if, we have to quarantine anyway. We have to get 4 COVID tests as well. We're no threat. We hadn't been in a hotspot. We had only been in regional New South Wales, in towns with 0 cases. So if those borders are there to protect people, how come they're not protecting us? We're residents with employment back in South Australia now and not let in. We don't have a problem with quarantining. We don't have a problem with getting tested. I'm vaccinated. I'm not a COVID denier. But the problem lies with the fact that the information being fed is inconsistent and often misleading and resulting in people being homelessness. And the government are getting young people into homelessness and then not helping them out and treating us like criminals. So I guess that's where the main issue lies for not only me, but around 7,000 other people trapped in New South Wales and Victoria.
And absolutely no support given while you were just sitting on the side of the road?
No financial support given. The girls we met last night were cut off from their COVID disaster payment, and because they're 21, they don't qualify for job seeker. And it was similar for me. I wasn't granted any extra financial support or any other form of compassion either.
Jesus. And so today I'm talking to you as you are making your way to Adelaide to a Medi Hotel. Tell us about this process and what's been going on today.
Yeah, so we've just pulled up actually. So basically you meet them at the border, the police, and you are escorted. So there's a fleet of 9 of us and cop car at the front, cop car at the back, and they escort us for around the 3-hour drive back to Adelaide. Once we're here, we have to have all our appropriate gear like masks and whatnot, and then we get put onto buses and transported to a Medi Hotel where we will stay for 14 days. New direction last night apparently announced, so we have 4 COVID tests while we're staying there. But yeah, it's quite a very interesting time today being escorted in a convoy with police across the state. Yeah, now we've got the 2 weeks in the Medi Hotel, which is a whole other thing because we did apply for home quarantine and we were denied with no explanation. So it's $3,000 for the 2-week stay.
Out of your pocket as well?
Yeah, out of our pocket.
Look, I know you don't have a lot of time. I know you're about to go into the Medi Hotel system. Do you have a message to leave the state government with today?
Just have some compassion. Be transparent with the people. You've got people from all walks of life stranded, and they do not deserve to be treated like that and shown a complete lack of support. So it doesn't matter if it's going to take 6 weeks. I mean, fair enough. Whatever, still a bit annoying, but at least be honest and have that end date for people so they know whether they should move to another town or bunker down or what they need to do, because it's really hard to prepare when you have absolutely no idea how long you're going to be in that situation.
Wavelength.
Thanks, David. Anyway, up next, I'll be letting you know what the hell has happened in the news this week. You're listening to Fresh. Welcome back to Wavelength. Right now, I'm letting you know what the hell has happened this week.
What the hell is going on this week? Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Big week this week, so let's have a look at some of the biggest headlines. First up, in what many are calling the worst grand final parade ever, thousands of protesters took to the streets of the Melbourne CBD to speak out against mandatory vaccines, which led to at least one person landing in hospital after contracting COVID, which certainly didn't help their cause. Authorities were quick to advise that the public are more than welcome to protest as long as they were fully vaccinated, which is kind of put them in a bit of a bind. Riders copped criticism for the aggressive nature of their demonstration, with one reporter being attacked and sprayed with urine. But in all fairness, they did work for Channel 7. The Prime Minister was once again nowhere to be found as riot police rolled out onto the streets in dystopic fashion. And while many were left questioning, why does everything seem to fall to shit when our PM leaves the country? Well, I think it's fair to say Australia is just constantly in shambles at the moment. And there really isn't ever a right time for ScoMo to ship out. We're that messy friend on a night out who you can't take your eye off for 5 minutes, otherwise they'll start a fight with their own reflection. On top of civil unrest, states around Australia were rocked by shockwaves and tremors. And no, it wasn't just from Barnaby Joyce taking his seat in Parliament. A magnitude 6 earthquake was felt across several borders, causing damage and mild excitement. In welcome news for SA though, the police commissioner respectfully told health authorities he'd thoroughly had enough of their shit and rolled back a number of restrictions, meaning dancing is now back, but not in licensed venues, which, if you've ever actually been in one of Adelaide's nightclubs, you'd know this isn't the worst decision in the world. No one wants to watch you muss, Tomo. And finally, in what has to be one of the greatest news stories of all time, rapper Eminem has opened up a pasta restaurant in his hometown of Detroit called, wait for it, Mum's Spaghetti. Amazing. I've got vomit on my sweater already. And that's what the hell has been happening this week.
Wavelength.
Thanks for that, Hamish. Hilarious.
No worries.
Hilarious as always.
Oh, thank you.
The earthquake, though, did you feel it?
No. And anyone who says they did is lying.
I agree.
A desire for some sort of excitement in their boring lives right now.
I'm sorry, if you're living on the bottom story of your townhouse in wherever in Adelaide, you didn't feel it.
No. Stop spreading misinformation. There's enough of that these days. But dancing's sort of back, which is kind of cool. Yeah, kind of. So in the confines of your own home.
What is it? You have to have like a private event, so like a wedding, or if you have like a private show, I suppose.
Yeah.
You can have it in a licensed venue like a nightclub as long as it's a private event. So I think if you throw like a private party in a nightclub, you can dance.
Okay. I can see a bit of a loophole being exploited there.
Yeah, I know. I just if you're going to have some dancing, either just do it all or don't do it at all. It's just a bit...
I know.
Go whole hog or not at all.
Just rip the cord.
Just
rip the cord. Let's just do it, especially here in Adelaide. Come on, guys. And Eminem.
Look, I'm not going there anytime soon. I don't trust his spaghetti.
And I don't trust Detroit as well. So,
well, I mean, we're not going there anytime soon because of our border rules. But
yeah,
it's not going to be on my first to-do list when I get out of Australia.
And Eminem's kind of like, as soon as you hear the words "Mum's Spaghetti," unfortunately, you do conjure up the image of vomit.
You do,
and that's thanks to his film clip, which probably not the best business decision in the world.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. So earlier in the show, we heard from Jemma Finn about her experience with the strict border rules in place at the moment. Now, we know they're meant to protect us here in SA, but when they're making people essentially homeless, surely something's got to give, right?
Surely. I mean, thank you, first of all, Jemma, for coming on the show, telling us your story. It's one that we haven't heard a lot of during the pandemic about how hard it is for people to come across the border by car, especially.
It sounds treacherous.
Oh, it sounds terrifying. I wouldn't want to do it. It's not about... We get the borders are there to protect us. We get there so that people can't flood in from New South Wales and Melbourne because they're in lockdown. Like, obviously, people would do that if we didn't put those borders up. But when they're making people sleep on the side of the road in a tent because of misinformation, because they're not clear with when people can come into Adelaide or South Australia from over the border, it's putting really young people as well at serious risk.
Yeah.
It's not normal to just sleep on the side of the road on the border. It's not normal to not know when you're allowed to come into South Australia and be told every day something different.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is concerning. And I get that SA Health are doing an incredible job at the moment keeping us safe and putting these rules in place. I mean, we hear a lot about what they're doing in Adelaide, but it's on these borders that I think that things are really confusing and people don't understand why, and there's no reason for them to be this confusing.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. You wouldn't think so. And I think these are the stories that, slip through the cracks a little bit, and these are the stories that piss people off, to be honest. And it pissed me off listening to that, because this is why people are skeptical to trust the government at the moment.
Right.
And they have been, let's be honest, they have been for a while, because of this incompetence and this misinformation that leads to situations like this that just should not happen. I understand we're going through an incredibly trying time at the moment, and it seems like everyone is absolutely doing their best to handle the situation, but that is something that just should not happen. Someone ending up in no man's land like that. And it's just disappointing, In the early stages of the pandemic, what was the one thing we heard over and over again? We're all in this together.
Yeah.
Oh, God, isn't that
Where did that go?
Yeah. What the hell has happened to that? Give me a break. We have turned our backs on each other completely. We're only interested in protecting the people that are currently in this state right now. And that is it. I mean, Jemma is a South Australian resident.
Yes, yeah. She's from Adelaide.
She is from Adelaide.
Yeah.
And we turned our backs on her, and not just her, but it sounds like many, many others.
Many
and
people.
That's where you start to think, at what point are we giving up too much here? At what point are we making too many sacrifices? Don't get me wrong. As you said, David, the borders absolutely have to be there to keep, those dirty Victorians and, Sydney siders from flooding in like the rodents that they are. But still, it's disappointing.
Where's the compassion? That's what I want to know.
And that's what she said at the end there. And
where is the compassion? I agree with you. I think that there is a level of incompetence here, but I think that the thing that pisses me off the most is just the inconsistency in the rules. They change them willy-nilly. They don't communicate with people properly. And like Jemma said, she applied and was approved to do quarantine at home once she got into South Australia. I have a friend this also happened to, who they came to South Australia from Sydney. They applied, got approved to do home quarantine, and as soon as they got here, they were forced immediately into the Pullman with no reason given and told they'd have to pay $3,000 to do it. When you're coming here on the expectation you're not going to pay $3,000 to do hotel quarantine for 2 weeks, maybe they wouldn't come in the first place. So it's like, I get that there are programs in place for financial hardship for people who can't afford the $3,000, but why would you say that someone's approved for home quarantine then backflip on that? We're doing a trial of home quarantine at the moment. Why wouldn't you get more people into that to see what it's like? I know the home quarantine system apparently has been working here. I mean, New South Wales is going to replicate it. For people who don't know, it's basically where you just have an app and it like alerts you and you have to immediately take a photo of yourself in the house.
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
Which could be quite compromising, depending on what it is
what if you're
doing.
In the shower?
Yeah. I mean, that's the least of my worries, but yes. But no, 100% I agree, David. Like, how can we expect people to do the right thing? How can our governments expect people to, do the right thing and abide by the rules and the laws when they don't bloody understand them and they're changing and they're fluid every day, And the thing that really got me is that Jemma's vaccinated as well. I mean, we're pushing people so hard to get vaccinated. And hey, if you go and get the jab, you'll be able to qualify for all these different benefits and you can start going back to normal and blah, blah, blah. But still, she was just treated like some kind of wild animal.
She's in the middle of her stay at the Pullman at the moment, so if anyone wants to send her some flowers, her name's Jemma Finn.
Yes, I'm sure she would love that. Fresh fam, come to the party, come through for us. But look, anyway, we've still got plenty of wavelength left for you guys tonight, so stay tuned. You're listening to Fresh.
Wavelength.
Anyway, that brings us to the end of the show tonight. Thank you so much for listening.
Make sure you're subscribed to the Wavelength podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, and you'll be the first to know when tonight's episode goes up.
Now, it's a public holiday next Monday, so we are going to be taking some much-needed time off. But when we come back, we'll hopefully be joined by a very special guest.
Ooh, looking forward to that.
Thanks so much for joining me again this week.
Wavelength.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.